Good morning, everyone joining us in person and online, and good afternoon or evening to those connecting from different time zone. For people present in the room, you can wear the headset to hear us better, both us and people online. My name is Ottavia, and I work as associate expert at UNICRI, the Interregional Crime and Justice Research Institute. We are very thankful for your time and interest in this session co-organized by UNICRI and ALT Advisory, titled From Research to Action, Cybercrime and Justice in Africa. Very quickly during this session, we will launch our research report just published today, titled Access to Justice in the Digital Age, Empowering Victims of Cybercrime in Africa. We're going to present its main findings, learn from from our speakers about many topics, from the common trends in cybercrime and online harms targeting African countries, the challenges national law enforcement agencies face in conducting investigations, and the obstacles victims encounter in reporting cybercrime and online harms and in seeking fair redress. Then we will aim to discuss recommendations, what gaps we can fill in as a multi-stakeholder community, and what practical solutions we can improve or develop as next step. We will conclude the sessions with participant feedback and expertise, including, of course, questions for our speaker. This work falls within UNICRI workstream on cybercrime and online harms, which aims to explore the interplay of different cyber threats and harmful behaviors, seeking to develop inclusive and rights-based solutions to address the convergence of cybercrime and online harms, including terrorism, violent extremism online, gender-based violence, child abuse and exploitation, and hate speech. At UNICRI, we address these threats through action-oriented research on niche thematic areas, but also capacity-building activities involving tech companies and technical assistance to member states and policy making. So, of course, I would like to thank our great speakers for their time today and their direct contribution to the report we are launching, we just published. Let me quickly introduce them for you all. So we have Tina Power. She's Director of ALT Advisory and Attorney of the High Court of South Africa. Michael Ilishebo, Digital Forensic Analyst and Cybercrime Investigator at the Zambia Police. And then online we have Sandra Acheng. Thanks a lot for joining us online, Executive Director at WOGNET, Women Uganda Network. And we are waiting for another online speaker who might join us soon, Belford Doherty, who is Cyber Policy Analyst and Head of IT at the Financial Intelligence Agency in Sierra Leone. Last but not least, my colleague Oren, Program Management Officer and Liaison Officer in New York, is joining as online moderator. To all online participants, of course, leave your questions and comments and feedback in the chat, and we're going to go through it during the Q&A. So logistically speaking, we will, before opening the floor to participants, we will have 2 rounds of questions for our speakers, to firstly set the scene, and secondly, to discuss recommendations, opportunities, and next steps. And I think we can just start. So my very first question is for Tina. So as the main author of this report we're launching today, could you please share with us the main findings of this report? Thank you.
Thanks, Ottavia. Good morning, everyone. Maybe just a quick good morning to all of the early birds who joined us in person. We appreciate it's a slightly chillier morning and it's been a very busy week, so thank you for taking the time to be here. And thank you to everyone online as well. We know some colleagues are joining from very different time zones, so we appreciate that everyone has put in their effort. And a final thank you to the technical team at the back who've helped make all of this possible. We really do appreciate it. Thank you so much. So as a point of departure, it's important to note that while many of the themes that we'll be discussing today may be familiar, what sets this report apart is its focus on Africa, which is somewhat unique given that we're launching it in Norway, but we don't often speak about what's going on in Africa from a cybercrime perspective, so that is important. It is also victim-centered in nature. We're not talking about hacks of big banks. We're talking about the lived and individual experiences of ordinary people who are victims of cybercrimes. And it is also informed by a diverse set of stakeholders, which is why this panel is also so unique. We've got members of the private sector, we've got members of civil society, we've got UN agencies, and we've got government. So it was truly informed by everyone's perspective and views. And lastly, it's been geared towards finding meaningful and practical solutions to the present challenges. So quite simply, the report isn't set to explain to us what cybercrimes are. It's set to explain to us how people are being affected and why so many remain without justice. So there's a lot to unpack in the report, but I'm going to just spend some time going through 4 of the overarching findings that we saw across 4 different countries: South Africa, Namibia, Sierra Leone, and Uganda. So the first finding is that we know cybercrimes are on the rise in Africa, but we don't yet have the full picture. Secondly, there's a significant disparity in how people are understanding various different forms of cybercrimes. Thirdly, certain types of cybercrimes are inherently gendered in nature. And finally, we are seeing deep structural barriers that are continuing to hinder access to justice. So I'll briefly take us through these. So the first is we know that cybercrimes is on the rise. We've seen this through emerging data, anecdotal evidence, and engagement with stakeholders. But we don't think we have the full picture yet. And this is largely due to significant underreporting, which I know Sandra's going to touch on shortly. But we've seen that a lot of people who are victims of cybercrimes don't know that they have been affected by a crime. Even if they do know it's a crime, they don't know where to report, or how to phrase what it is that has happened to them. There's also, particularly in relation to more of the personal types of online harms, like the non-consensual sharing of intimate images, a lot of women in particular feel that there is significant stigma in reporting and that they will be blamed or re-victimized, so that hinders them from reporting. And in many instances, we've also just seen that frontline officers at police stations aren't equipped to respond to these types of crimes. They don't know what codes to use. They don't know how to articulate what the crime is, which then hinders the whole justice process. So where data exists, it is very helpful, and we can start seeing what the trends are and pick it up. But we do need to do a lot more to better capture what the actual reality is, because it means we're tackling somewhat of an invisible problem. And this is not to say that the harms aren't real. They're just currently not captured on the system. So secondly, and this links to capturing, the report highlights quite an important distinction between financial harm and personal harm. Financial harms are the harms where you've been scammed, you've been hacked, someone has stolen your money. And then we have personal harms, which are far more intimate. This is the non-consensual sharing of intimate images, being harassed online, being doxxed, being threatened, instances of hate speech. And what is interesting about the distinction is how it is responded to. If you report a financial crime or you report a theft, there's often a far quicker response and a more immediate response, whereas reporting personal crimes are seen as more intimate or domestic in nature, not always taken as seriously. So the distinction between the 2 types of crimes was also an important finding. Then lastly, or second to last, the gendered nature of the crimes also came through incredibly strongly in the research and engagements with stakeholders on the ground, where there are instances of harassment, doxing, intimate images. These are all very gendered in nature, and it is clear that women are disproportionately affected, as are members of the LGBTQI+ community. And finally, all of this culminates in us identifying that there are several structural barriers that are hindering access to justice for victims of cybercrimes. We are seeing that many countries are simply lacking the correct legal frameworks to enable this. There is either a patchwork of laws, non-existing laws, or laws that are outdated or outmoded. We are also seeing that law enforcement and justice systems are often undercapacitated in Africa. Resources and budgeting is not directed towards these institutions, but it'll be lovely to hear from Michael as someone who's playing a critical role in these institutions as to what the type of capacity is that we need. We're also seeing that both victims and frontline responders are lacking knowledge as to how to navigate cybercrimes and cybercrimes legislation. And we are also seeing that people don't recognize this as a crime, which then means that they are not reporting. So ultimately, the report has made it clear that cybercrimes is not just a technical issue, it's a justice issue. And if we don't have correct avenues for justice, victims and survivors will not be able to seek recourse, we will lack accountability, and we will not be able to move forward as a continent where we are ensuring that people are safe and protected, particularly when they are online. Thank you, Octavia.
Thanks a lot, Tina. That was a fantastic introduction to the report we are publishing today, but to the conversation and discussion of today. So now I would like to move to you, Michael, and get your perspective as law enforcement. So could you please share with us what do you think are the main challenges law enforcement authority face with cybercrime investigations today? Thank you.
Good morning, Otavia, and good morning, my fellow panelists and those in this room and those online. So basically, as a law enforcement officer from Africa, and also one of the law enforcement officers in this world who's trying at all costs to ensure that we have a safer cyberspace for all, because as you know, cyber has no jurisdictional borders. So basically, from the African perspective, the challenges are many. Cybercrime comes in a multi-phase way. What I'm trying to mean is, in almost every crime that is committed today has elements of digital evidence. Digital evidence is highly policed using the cyber laws. So we find a situation where almost all traditional forms of crime that used to happen in the past are more prominent now because of the use of ICT. Just as the increase in the nominal traditional crimes is on the rise, we've seen cybercrime also coming on the rise. So amongst the many challenges that we are facing as African law enforcement agencies or African law enforcers is that the first part of it is the lack of capacity in terms of technical skills. Because when you talk of cybercrime investigations, the process starts with a person reporting. In this case, there is also an increase in underreporting of these cases. Most cases that happen, people fail to report them to the police, not because they don't want to report them, but because they know that either by the time, even if they report, they may not get sufficient help. Secondly is because, as she's put it, it could not be a crime that has been committed from the aspect of financial gain, but personal gain. There are certain people that would want to keep their privacy, as in really private, knowing that if I go to this police station, maybe they may not handle my case in an effective and private manner, where some images of sexual nature or anything that may compromise their standing in society, they may end up failing to report these cases. So as the cases are reported at police station levels, what happens next is the suspects are supposed to be arrested and arraigned before the courts of law. Then if the police are failing to handle some of these cases due to technical skills, what happens at the courts? The same scenario happens at the courts, both from the prosecution side also and from the magistrate and the justice side. So basically, in terms of capacity building, it must be done in a way that we do not just capacitate the police alone. We go on to capacitate offer capacity to the judiciary, which is both the prosecutors and the judges. So also, we've seen an increase in terms of the rate at which cybercrime is happening due to the use of AI. We've seen people that may not even actually know how to code, people who may not even know how to frame this and that, they're using AI to enhance their criminal skills. Third, also the use of encryption in order to hide whatever information that may be found either on their mobile devices, on their laptop. They're using highly powerful encryption, which takes time to break. As a result, that may delay the rate at which justice is enforced. Thirdly, also, the use of cryptocurrency. As you've seen, we've seen an increase where criminals now no longer have to rely on fiat cash. In order for them to commit a crime, they hide under the cryptocurrency barrier. But of course, in Africa, we are trying, with the help of the US government, a grouping was formed, which is called the Africa Cryptocurrency Working Group, which is under the US Department of Justice, attached to the AU in Addis Ababa. I think there is about 8 countries, and more countries will be joining. We are trying to tackle the issues of cryptocurrency. So thirdly, it's the issues of legal frameworks. As you know, to fight cybercrime, you start with domestic laws. Then later on, you graduate to international conventions. So most African countries are not party to the Budapest Convention. But fortunately enough, the UN has come up with a draft UN Convention against cybercrime, which by nature, in any African country which is a member of the UN, may, in a way or one way or the other, may find themselves signing to the Budapest, to the UN Convention when it comes into, when it is signed. I think it will be signed in October in Vietnam. Then, of course, the process will start of acceding and all those. So that would be the easier way for member states in Africa to be part to the international conventions. Of course, we have the Malabo Convention on data protection and cybersecurity, but it does not address the current increase in terms of crime. There is also the Budapest Convention, which has been around for the last 20 years. If I checked, the last time I checked the data, there were only about less than 15, if not 12, African countries who are part to the Budapest Convention. This in itself has played a critical role in terms of us getting information when it comes to cases or criminals who are outside the jurisdiction of Africa. So that brings out to the issues of jurisdictions, because we've seen an increase in crimes being committed in nations that may not even have cyber laws in place. So what is happening right now is if a country has poor cyber crime registration, somebody from another jurisdiction may actually cause financial and emotional harm, and yet in that country it's not a crime. So we've seen so many challenges that such that if I was to list them here, they will resonate with almost all the challenges all enforcement agencies are facing. But what I've just said, these are part of the most critical challenges that we are facing.
Thanks a lot, Michael, for this overview and snapshot, very detailed snapshot into the different challenges law enforcement may face in regards to cybercrime investigation. Something interesting you mentioned regarding the rise of cybercrime with AI. Something we have seen via different research is that AI is not creating new criminals, is actually allowing criminals in other fields moving into the cybercrime environment, which is a bit concerning because, yeah, I think we can all agree that AI reduce the level of barrier into everything that is technical. So thanks for bringing that up as well. Moving forward, I would love to come to you, Sandra. I hope, yeah, you hear me. Yeah, we see you. That's fantastic. And to you, given your line of work and the important work you do, I would like to focus more on the victim side. So we would love to hear from you. What are the obstacles that victims encounter in reporting cybercrime and online harms, and in seeking fair redress, particularly from a gender perspective? Thanks to you.
Thank you so much for the question. Could you please confirm that you can hear me?
Yeah, we can hear. Yeah.
Okay, it would have been lovely to be in that room, but nonetheless, I'm joining virtually. And good morning, good afternoon, and might be evening for everyone. For some other people who are joining as well, I'm very glad to be speaking about this subject. So based on the work that we have done at Women of Uganda Network, looking at some of the obstacles that victims encounter, especially women and gender minorities groups, they face a lot of numerous challenges, especially in being able to report, but also being able to seek redress, which are sometimes, in most cases, shaped by social stigma, sometimes institutional gaps, and also digital illiteracy, as also clearly highlighted by Michael. So I would go deep into it. So one of the obstacles has been stigma and the fear of also public shaming, whereby women who experience tech-facilitated gender-based violence, such as non-consensual intimate distribution of intimate images, that in the context of Uganda is usually referred to as revenge porn. And also cyber stalking and doxing, they often really fear being blamed or ridiculed. And then there's also the cultural norms that discourage women from speaking out, especially when the abuse is sexual in nature and also intimate in nature. So there's this case in 2022 when we documented during our study, a young woman in the northern part of Uganda had her intimate images leaked by her ex-partner. So rather than her posting it, reporting it, she withdrew from social media and also isolated herself. So when she reported this case to Women of Uganda Network, she expressed fear of being judged by police and also her community. So when the case was handled confidentially through WOOCNet's toll-free line, but she never really pursued formal justice as well. And then also talking about the aspect of limited literacy and also awareness of rights, whereby many victims, especially those in the rural women and youth, do not recognize online harms or crimes, or are unaware of actually the available legal protections. So a lack of awareness of, for example, a data protection law or the Computer Misuse Act amendment in 2022, or the Uganda Police Cybercrime Units also limits reporting. Still an example during a workshop that we conducted in Apache district, that is a district that is based in northern Uganda. It also found out that about 80% of the participants, majority of which were women, had never heard of what Uganda Data Protection and Privacy Act is. So many believe that online reporting abuse was maybe for those who have strong political views or financial connection. So you can see really. So there's also a bit of lack of awareness in regards to that. And then also talking about the weak law and also the enforcement response and institutional aspect of it, you find that victims also face very dismissive attitudes from police, especially when the harm is online and not physical. A serious case that we actually recently was reported to our police through one of our partner, whereby her private and intimate images were unlawfully shared in multiple WhatsApp groups, which we also was able to identify the WhatsApp group without consent. So she strongly believed that these images were taken by her former boyfriend, which was also named, but I'll keep it private for this. So as she was, he was the only person with access to her at that state, and she also asserted that he took these photos without her consent. So she reported this case to the central police stations of Kampala. All the case details are with offensive registration registered and as an unsolicited information under the Computer Misuse Act capped 96. So she was deeply very concerned that more content would be shared, and also as she and also the ex-partner also engaged in intimate activities in his residence, which also had a CCTV camera to which he had sole access to. But the police could not help her because she didn't have enough evidence. So we were able to provide some support of having screenshots, which she was also able to share, and either also if she has direct access or to the WhatsApp group, which she didn't have, but a friend had access to the WhatsApp group and also belonged to the WhatsApp group, but she couldn't report this case because the friend could not report it. It needed someone in the WhatsApp group to be able to report. And I was actually looking through the rules in the WhatsApp group, which also says if you're quiet in the WhatsApp group, you will be able to be excluded and all that. So you can see that the aspect of law enforcement that lacks specific trainings, especially to handle tech-facilitated gender-based violence, is still lacking, and investigation often are slow and also very inclusive. So this requires a lot of training to be done. And also linked to that, also a university student also reported that cyberbullying and defamation via fake Facebook accounts to her local police post in Lira district that is also based in Uganda, in northern Uganda. So the police asked her to present the suspect, who was anonymous, and then told her to ignore it and deactivate her account. So through WUGNET's legal network, we were able to link them to the Barefoot Law for digital legal support, but formal justice was not pursued. So you find that there's a lot of issues that continue to happen, also with the insufficient legal frameworks and gender-sensitive provisions that we have. This continue to happen. For the case of Uganda, we have no specific law in Uganda that address technology-facilitated gender-based violence. Although we have the African Commission of Human and People's Rights Resolution 522, which talks about the protection of women against digital violence in Africa, it's still something that recognizes online gender-based violence as a human right. And this is a step, and is also calling for all the member states countries to be able to work together to ensure that we have specific laws that address digital violence as a whole. So I would like to stop here and hand it back to you. Thank you.
Thanks a lot. Thanks a lot, Sandra, for sharing different, unfortunately different example of cases related to cybercrime, online harms, and with a gender-based violence component as well. Your perspective is very much needed in this type of conversation. So now, we set a bit the scene of what is happening and what are the different challenges that different sectors within this topic address. So perhaps we can move into recommendations, opportunities, and next steps, and then of course open it to the floor, both in on-site and online floor. So coming back to you, Tina, given your role as attorney as well, and your very strong legal background, what can you share with us on the legislative aspect? So how can we use legislative instruments to really advance the prevention and countering of cybercrime and online harms? Thank you.
Thanks, Ottavia. If there's ever a question to get a lawyer excited, it's what is the value of laws? So I'll try to keep it brief, but I want to touch on why laws matter, how the right laws can lead to tangible positive results, and what we can do to make our laws better. So an important finding of the report is good laws matter for several reasons. They provide clear definitions and guidance as to what the crime is and what the options you have are. It's also essential both for the public understanding of what the law means and what justice means, as well as for how the justice system will then unfold once it's been reported. Laws also give victims a legal basis to seek redress and ensure that there is accountability. And a well-drafted piece of legislation lays the foundation for action. It enables us to know what to do from the moment of reporting, which we've now heard multiple times is a clear challenge, through to investigation, which is also, there are complications, as well as at the actual justice system level. Once we get to courts, what is going to happen? So the law gives us that foundation, which is much needed. So without laws and clear guidance that are grounded in human rights, victims will remain vulnerable and access to justice will remain limited. South Africa's Cybercrimes Act provides quite a useful example of a law. I'm not going to say that it is good, but it does tick many of the boxes. It addresses both financial and personal harms. It provides institutional guidance and requires the development of more sort of operational requirements, such as standing operational procedures. How do we gather the evidence? How do we store the evidence? How do we use the evidence in court? But what I would like to emphasize here is the real-world power of legislation. Having the right legal framework can tangibly support victims of various forms of cybercrimes. And I'm going to share a few examples in some of the work that we've done recently. So we've issued several cease and desist letters. In South Africa, we call them letters of demand, in cases involving threats of the disclosure of intimate images. So the image hasn't yet been disclosed, but it's a threatened disclosure. And in the letters, by simply referencing South Africa's Cybercrime Act and explicitly stating what the criminal sanctions are, we have found that it's an incredibly useful deterrent to stop the harm in its tracks. When people see that there is a real legal harm or a real legal risk at play, they generally have tended to stop in our experience. And so this is quite an important reminder that even the threat of legal accountability can be a strong deterrent. A second successful example that we've had was using South Africa's Protection from Harassment Act. And here we used it to obtain what we call a protection order. In other jurisdictions, it's generally known as a restraining order. And we achieved this on behalf of a human rights defender who was being relentlessly attacked on X and threatened with real-world violence. But fortunately for us, our act applies to both harassment and threats in the physical realm as well as the online realm. So we were able to go to court and explain to the judge both the online harms and the stresses and the consequences, as well as how this could unfold in the offline world. And we were able to secure protection for our client in that way. And these examples demonstrate that the law can offer justice, but the law needs to be good. It needs to be well crafted. Definitions need to be clear. The accountability mechanisms and the reporting mechanisms also need to be clear. So one of the useful things about the UNICRI report is that we don't just stop there. We don't say you need good laws. We actually want to figure out how we can make good laws. So we've set up a set of recommendations, a part of which proposes that states undergo a legislative audit to identify gaps, overlaps, and areas for concern at the country level. So each country assesses where they are at. Do we have overlapping laws? Are we missing something fundamental? Do we simply not have a law, like is the case in Namibia? They haven't yet passed it, and that means that victims are completely without redress. We then couple this with a cybercrimes model law that is victim-centered. We have seen other cybercrimes model law around the world and some in Africa as well, but we have yet to see one that is victim-centered. How do we create laws that focus on the people who are actually affected? So we want to structure the legal approach in two forms. We set up the audit to assess where the challenges are, but then we also help you fill the gaps. This is what a model law could look like. Apply it to your jurisdiction and see what works. But we also know, and I'm sure other colleagues will discuss it as well, that law alone is not enough. This needs to be coupled with comprehensive training of justice sector actors so they know how to apply the law. But equally, we are proposing embarking on a Know Your Rights campaign so that ordinary members of the public are able to know that they have been a victim of a cybercrime and then know how to report and what the reporting process looks like. So we want good laws, but we also want people to be able to use the laws. It is very unhelpful having a good piece of legislation, but no one knows how to use it or how to access it. So in summary and in closing, because I see our time is moving on, I will caveat all of this, as lawyers generally tend to do, to say that legislation is a foundation. It is not the finish line. For our laws to be effective, they need to be clear, they need to be grounded in human rights, and they need to be well communicated, both to members of the public and those within the justice system. This needs to be equally coupled with institutional capacity. And capacity has come up time and time again, both from Sandra and Michael. So we know there is a clear challenge there. And laws need to be able to support that and enable that. So when all is said and done, as a lawyer, I see huge potential and value in the law, and it is one of the solutions. It is an important one, and it does provide us with what we need to take us forward, but it needs to be coupled with everything else that we've discussed today as well. Thank you, Octavia.
Thanks to you, Tina. That is very, I think the perspective of having not just legislative framework, but the right legislative framework is a key message here. Michael, back to you again from law enforcement perspective. Where do you think we should focus our efforts in enhancing law enforcement capabilities towards tackling cybercrime? And perhaps if we can get your views on one of the recommendations in the report is the use of clear coding systems for cybercrime investigations. If you could share anything on this, that would be very helpful. Thank you.
So basically, I'll pick it up from the previous speaker. You see, when we embark on the Know Your Right campaign to focus on victim-specific laws, what we've discovered is that, like from my experience, from the Zambian experience, is that in my country, those laws are there that actually protect the victim. But unfortunately, the civil society are coming up and saying that some of these laws are meant to stifle freedom of expression. So as much as the government, as much as the laws would want to speak life into protection of the victims, somehow others would feel their freedom of expression is being hampered. So that's one of the challenges that we need to find a balance. So coming to the question, So some of the major recommendations or working solutions that we need in order for us to address, fight, and mitigate, of course, you cannot completely stop cybercrime, you can only mitigate it, is that the first part is, as I earlier alluded on, is on capacity building. Not only the police, but also the justice system. The wheel of justice starts with the law enforcement, ends with the courts. So once we tailor in some courses that are specific to the needs of these players in the justice system, who at least be able to address and mitigate some of these cases, instead of a case taking probably 6 months to be disposed of in court, that can be done under 2 weeks. Then secondly also is a public-private partnership. That, on that aspect, we need a clear guideline, we need a clear consensus on both the private and the public, because most of the technical skills, most of the technical infrastructure, digital infrastructure lies in the hands of the private sector. So I'll give an example. We've got social media platforms where some of these, I would say both, even financial and non-financial cases or offenses happen. Sometimes in the request for information from these service providers, I won't name them, but you know them, they will tell you that this is not against our community guidelines. What has community guidelines got to do with an offense, an act that is an offense in a certain jurisdiction? So in that case, they may not actually be able to give you the information you are seeking for. An image may be posted of someone online. You request for it to be put down. They'll still say this does not go against our community guidelines. So we need a clear balance, we need cohesion, we need to reach consensus to a situation where, as much as it may not be able to go against their guidelines, but as long as the victim feels not safe, imbalanced, or public shamed by virtue of that post or image, these social media platforms need to be bringing down this information, this content. Also, when the law enforcement agencies also request for information, there is need for them to act swiftly to give the law enforcers the information they are after, as long as we've met the basic criteria of either a subpoena, a court order, or anything that they demand. So once we address the issue of private-public partnership, we halfway have solved the problem. Also, we have the issue of enhanced legal framework. I'll give an example for Zambia. Just 2 months ago, we amended our Cyber Security and Cybercrimes Act into making the Cyber Security Act a single piece of registration and also enhancing the Cybercrimes Act. We have come a long way in terms of addressing cybercrime. But again, if you look at the current law, it is able to address what challenges we are facing now. But that does not mean that in 2, 3, 4 years' time, the same piece of registration will be as effective as it is now. So the process of enhanced legal frameworks has to always be a continuous, because a cyber law has a shelf life. It doesn't sit like a criminal procedure. The penal code, the mighty penal code that probably was enacted 50 years ago, and the same applies today. So enhanced legal frameworks which are supposed to mirror to each other, meaning that if we have a mirrored Cybercrimes Act in Africa, where an offense in Benin, an offense in Kenya, an offense in Zambia speak to the same facts. Unlike where it's an offense in Zambia, you go to Kenya, it's not an offense. Probably the perpetrator might be in another jurisdiction, in this case Kenya, and the victim is in Zambia. The damage has been done in Zambia, but the victim is in Kenya. And yet, when you compare the cyber registration, you discover that indeed in Zambia it's an offense, in Kenya it's not. So there it becomes more of a bilateral kind of arrangement too. But if the laws are as clear in terms of speaking life into each other, they are mirrored that way, I can assure you we are going to probably reduce cybercrime by a huge percentage, because anyone in any African country will know that what I'm doing is an offense where I am, and the victim I'm targeting, if there's South Africa or anywhere else. So amongst these recommendations are that we need to have a mirrored cyber registration. also, I earlier on alluded to the aspect of international conventions. As I said, the rate at which African countries are becoming party to the Budapest Convention, not talk of the UN Convention, which is not yet to be signed. I think there is need for us to push for African countries to be part to most of these international conventions, because cyber knows no border. Cyber knows no jurisdiction. Cyber is not a respect of anyone. An infrastructure here in Norway can be messed up by somebody who is in Colombia or Zambia. So how do we address these issues is for us to meet somewhere through an international treaty. Thank you.
Thanks to you, Michael, and thanks for the different oversight and for the recommendations in general. But I also really appreciate you introducing the public-private partnership debacle. It's something that is very hard to tackle. I think probably everybody in the room and also online have faced this issue in one way or the other. Before moving into questions and feedback from participants, we'd like to come back to you, Sandra, for, again, we are looking into recommendations, so perhaps your view on recommendations on how we can effectively support victims of these type of crimes, again, with a particular attention to the needs of women and girls. Thank you.
Thank you for the question. Can you hear me?
Yes.
Okay, so I will start from where Tina Power actually stopped. She said the law is not enough. And I like to say that you cannot fix what is broken by tech using the law. However, we also need the law. So for my recommendation, I would say there's need, as also Michael highlighted, that there's need to strengthen the legal and policy framework, enact specific laws that speaks about online gender-based violence or technology-facilitated gender-based violence. And these laws should be able to explicitly cover issues around non-consensual intimate images or videos, cyber stalking, doxing, and also online harassment. And more importantly, also the AI-generated sexual content referred to as deepfakes. Now we also have cheapfakes. And also the gender disinformation that is also very much linked to AI-generated content. And also speaking about the law, we can also see how to integrate gender-sensitive provisions, especially into ICT legislation, ensure that laws such as the Computer Misuse Act is reviewed and also amended to prevent misuse, and also ensure that the protection of actually survivors, not just because of who you are in the society, but everyone is being supported. And also, as also shared, harmonize some of the domestic laws with the international instruments, and specifically the Maputo Protocol that talks about women's rights, and also building institutional capacity and accountability. How do we ensure that we train law enforcement, the prosecutors, the judicial officers on digital crimes with a gender lens, include models, especially on trauma-informed survivor support, ensure that there's digital violence, ensure that also we have an inclusion of online investigation techniques that is built or taught to these people, and also establishing delegated technology-facilitated gender-based violence response desks, especially at the police post with female officers and also the digital crime experts. Monitor also enforcement to ensure that justice for survivors is being guaranteed and not further victimization. And also the need to have expand access to survivor-centered support services. How do we develop and also scale up support platforms that are available? For instance, we have the OGBV web portal, like the WhoopNet has, and it's able to offer support to digital security tips, also referrals, and also we have the toll-free line that help for reporting and emotional support. So how do we scale that? And also have mobile outreach clinics, especially for psychosocial services in the rural areas, because these are some of the areas that are most times thought or that they do not face this thing. And ensure that there's also multi-language access, disability inclusive services, so that no cyber is left out. And facilitate also legal aid, free legal aid, digital security support through partnership with civil society organization and legal tech firms. Again, for us to be able to reduce, I would not like to say end because we cannot end, reduce cyber crimes against women and girls. We need to have a multi-stakeholder partnership, which is very key. And also promote digital literacy and awareness, ensure that women and girls have education on online safety. And these trainings should be able to focus on managing the privacy settings, recognizing that online scam and online harassment is real, and also the reporting channels and how to document evidence is also being taught. And conducting some of the regular community-based workshops, the use of radios, the use of social media. Recently, we explored the use of comic books that was really very impactful, going to the community and reading to them, a fun way for them to be able to educate themselves on some of the digital security tips, but also being aware that online gender-based violence or cybercrime is real. And integrating also some of the cyber safety and digital rights skills, especially into the school curriculum, especially for women and marginalized learners is key. And I would like to conclude and say that for us to also be able to reduce online gender-based violence, we have to start thinking of how do we engage boys, men, and also the communities in prevention. How do we challenge harmful gender norms and also online misogyny? Let's have a facilitated dialogue, especially on respectful digital behavior and content, and support male champions, peer educators in school and communities, groups to be able to be models that can promote positive engagement so that we can really be able to see how to mitigate the increasing rate of online gender-based violence. Thank you.
Thanks to you, Sandra, for sharing all these recommendations and fantastic ideas. The use of comic books, for instance, I think it's a very great example of how to involve communities as well. So I think we have a bit more than 10 minutes left. So it would be fantastic to come to you all. And thanks again for your interest and time in joining our session. I don't know if there is any questions or comments from the... Yes, please. I think you would need to go to the mic. Thanks a lot.
Thank you and good morning. Can you hear me? I am Senator Shoaib Afolabi Salisu from Nigeria. I chair the Nigerian Senate Committee on ICT and Cyber Security, and I'm also the chairman of the West African Parliamentarians Network on Internet Governance. I am extremely delighted to be here and listening to the conversation in the last 1 hour or so. You could as well be speaking about Nigerian situation. I mean, listening to Zambia, to Uganda, and I've come to the conclusion that the issues are fairly the same, particularly on the African continent. My brother gentleman spoke about the civil society organization, and I think that's why this conversation needs to also extend to the civil society organization. Nigeria first enacted the cybercrime law in 2015. Last year, we amended it. And we're also in the process of amending it again, particularly because of the UN convention that was just adopted in December. But the challenge is that the civil society organizations, every time there's an attempt to amend the cybercrime law to protect citizens, the civil society organizations are always up in arms, believing and thinking that it's about to constrain the space, forgetting that sometimes where your own rights stops is where the rights of somebody else start. So I think we need to bring the civil society organizations into the conversation. The second point for me, and I spoke about this 2 days ago at the parliamentary track, unless and until we're able to bring the big techs into the table, and I suggest a situation where the Africa as a continent come together, does the same thing that happens in Europe. You violate the law in a part of Europe, the entire Europe will fine you. Unless and until all of those big techs know that if you violate the law in South Africa, your sanction is not limited to South Africa. Same sanction will be applicable in Cote d'Ivoire, in Ghana, in Nigeria. That is the only time they will respect our national laws, our national values. As of now, we almost appear helpless. When we make the laws, they violate the laws, the same content that they will bring down in less than 1 day in Europe, you'll be shuffling papers up and down for the next 2 weeks. Meanwhile, the victims continue to suffer. Sometimes people go into depression on account of that. I think we need a continental approach to come to the table and say, you violate the law, you don't respect the norms here, that sanction will be applicable across the African continent. So I'd like to thank you again for this beautiful conversation. You speak to the African issue, you speak to the African continent, and I think now we need to move from talking about it to have a concerted African position.
Thanks a lot, Senator. That is very important what you're sharing, both involving civil society and bringing the big tech at the table. I don't know if panelists speakers would like to comment.
So basically, I will engage the senator after this session. As is earlier put on, our challenges are not almost are the same. What Nigeria is going through is what any other African country is going through. As I said earlier on, we'll continue the conversations beyond the panel session.
I just have one brief comment. I see there's more questions, but just to note on the question about civil society responding to legislation, there's a very fine line. And what the report recommends and proposes is when we're drafting legislation, it must be grounded in human rights. So where there are tensions around freedom of expression, or there is the potential misuse of the act to potentially curb other people's rights, we need to strike that balance. And that's why the report very much suggests any law reform efforts must be grounded in human rights, must align with our international law commitments, particularly the conventions that we've signed onto as countries. So I appreciate the tension. It is a difficult one, and it is a fine line to navigate, but that's why we want our laws to be grounded in human rights, so that all human rights are taken into account when drafting the legislation. But I see there's some more questions.
Yeah, we can take one more question from the floor, and then we have a few questions online. So please go ahead. Thank you.
Yeah, Yuri Bokovoy from the Finnish Greens Party. It's good that it is highlighted that the big tech still washes their hands of any of responsibility of monitoring their platforms for crime everywhere in the world. But my comment was mostly about the same point that was raised about civil societies. I originally come from Belarus, which is struggling from completely the same issues, but there the civil societies have been basically crushed by the government to do whatever they want. And I just want to remind people that civil societies can kind of be seen as a symptom of public distrust of the government's capabilities and resources to handle these issues. And they should really be worked together with, even if they are annoying to compromise with on cyber law. But yeah, my question is mostly about what's the view of you, Michael, and Dina as a prosecutor and law enforcer on the weight of public trust in these institutions in ways to handle these situations? I mean, you highlighted it about the trust affecting underreporting quite heavily, but is there any specific way you can see that being improved significantly in near future? Thank you.
So basically, as part of enhancing trust between the victims or the citizens, is that the Zambia Police Service, in this case, has taken up a deliberate policy of sensitization through various forms. It could be radio, it could be TV, it could be articles, it could be social media, short videos, and any other means in which we have to reach out to the citizens. So as much as cyber is demystified in Africa as something that is a little bit challenging to an ordinary law enforcement officer, efforts have been made through various platforms and various engagements to ensure that at least at any given situation, at any police station, they may start a case, they may do something, but when it goes beyond their technical capabilities, they are able to reach us at the force headquarters, which is the police headquarters. So we are trying, but I hope within the next coming year or two or so, we'll reach that, but it's not something that is easy.
I think we can have more questions. I can respond to people afterwards.
Okay. Sorry, I'm just gonna take the two questions online, if that's okay with you, very quickly. So we have one question on, for you, Sandra, specifically on existing mechanism to support victims of crime. And the second question for you, Sandra, but also for the other speakers, is do we have example of countries where countries have enacted and robustly implemented laws against tech-facilitated gender-based violence? And if yes, how did they go about popularizing and implementing them? Thank you. Perhaps, Sandra, if you'd like to start. Thank you.
Yeah, so the existing mechanism, where is the person from? From which country?
I think is Emi Okwir Ogele, who asked the question online, but I'm not sure about the country, but perhaps.
Oh, so he was just saying he was happy to learn some of the existing mechanism highlighted by Sandra. So it wasn't a question.
And then there is the question about, if you know about countries that have enacted and robustly implemented laws against tech-facilitated gender-based violence.
Okay, so that question is asked by Dr. Wakabi, who is also my friend and our partner from Uganda. So it's a hard question, but there are some notable examples of countries that have enacted and actively also implemented laws that address technology-facilitated gender-based violence. Of course, there is really no legal framework that is perfect and universally that is comprehensive, but some countries have really made meaningful strides, especially in the legislation. Maybe Tina Power could talk about the South African one that also have done the Cybercrime Act 2020 and also some of the key provisions, especially around it, is criminalizing malicious communication, including those intended to cause mental, psychological, and also emotional harm. And as far as I know, they have implemented strategy of also doing partnership with women's rights organizations and also to disseminate information, but also the creation of the cybercrime apps under the South African Police Services. But Tina Power would like maybe to explore more on that. Some of the countries that I also know of is like Australia, that also have the Online Safety Act of 2021, and that focus really on targeting tech-facilitated gender-based violence, including image-based abuse, cyberbullying, and also serious online harassment. from conversation, they have also
Sorry,
the e-safety.
Sorry, Sandra, we are up of time. If you can just quickly close it, that would be fantastic. Sorry.
Yes, so they also have the e-safety commissioner that also is very important. And also some of the examples that I know Dr. Wakabi knows about in Kenya, but explicitly we don't have policies that really specifically might be talking about technology facilitated gender-based violence, but things that relate to that. Thank you, and over to you.
Thanks a lot. I'm sorry we don't have time for this, but you can come to us to share any comments or the questions you might have. Apologies for running out of time. But yeah, I would really like to thank all the speakers, Tina, Michael, and Sandra, for your fantastic contribution. Thanks also to my colleague Oren, who has been up late to follow us. And please feel free to come to us for any comments and questions. Thanks again for your time.